Morning. Apologies, no slides, so no death by PowerPoint. I'm still preparing my presentation at the moment, so bear with me. I just want to take you through it's a cliche, it's the journey word that we've been through over the last 6.5, 7 years at Lincoln. And I tried to encapsulate it in starting off with the people, the tin, the clouds, and then the people. So I'll try and cover that. And we've got quite a lot of touch points in this journey that we've been through that chime with the presentation from Mark Cleary this morning, the Gartner presentation. I might not necessarily agree with everything that Mark sort of described this morning, but there's an awful lot that I recognise that we in this sector need to recognise and understand. Again, apologies, I'm going to be referring to my notes. It's not that I need reminders about what I'm talking about. I just need to remember everything that I brain dumped last night and try and get it in some sensible order. So I joined the university and the HE sector in 2012. Prior to that, I was in the commercial, the private sector, working in retail, business-to-business logistics, etc. So quite a big shock for me to start working within the higher education sector for a university. But one of the things that I brought with me was enterprise architecture. And my first task at the university was to create an IT strategy. And having used enterprise architecture quite successfully in my previous organisations for a number of years, it was a very good grounding to start creating the IT strategy. And we use TOGAF, the Open Group Architecture Framework. The process starts with understanding the organisation. So this is where we start with the people. Talking to colleagues around the university, understanding what the university was. For me, it was particularly useful to, I mean, I sit from the outside and look at a university, and I went to university myself, but actually getting into the guts of it, understanding governance, process, data, etc. Talking to my colleagues in IT, understanding how IT worked in a university. I mean, one of the things that I found out along the way that we're quite fortunate to have a very, very centralised IT organisation. So there's very little that occurs within the academic areas of the university. So the start of this journey was enterprise architecture, and we developed an IT strategy, and there were a number of outcomes that came out of this. The first thing, when I look at comparing the university in terms of as a business, so at the time we were about 120, 130 million pound income. I've worked in organisations of a similar size, I've worked in groups of organisations of a similar size. When I look at comparing what we had, the amount of infrastructure and technology, it just didn't seem to make sense. I didn't know how things operated there. So one of the outcomes of the strategy was thinking about how best to invest in infrastructure. And one of the key outcomes was at the very early stage considering, can we take advantage of cloud-based services? So we have loads of tin, and to be honest, I don't see in the foreseeable future us ever getting rid of all of the tin. I don't see us getting rid of all of the infrastructure. I mean, we will always need some sort of networking, we will always need some sort of AV, we will always need the sort of support for that. So, I mean, if you look far enough into the future, you might say, well, if there's prolific whatever G mobile data, then yeah, do we need networking within buildings and universities? Well, I suspect we'll have that certainly for longer than I'm working in the university. So we set on this strategy where we would actively consider cloud-based services in whatever shape or form that consisted of. So whether it be software as a service delivered solutions, whether it be platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, we would consider those. there are a number of caveats and conditions we put to that. It's got to be functional, so there's no point in just going out and buying a cloud-based service because it's a cloud-based service. It's got to do what we need it to do, what the university needs it to do. It's got to fit in with our technical environment, and I'll come back to that a little bit more. It's got to be secure. It's got to perform. I mean, there's an awful lot of control we have over systems within our data centres. You have to give up a certain amount of that control, and there's advantages and disadvantages as you move into cloud-based services. It's still got to be resilient, and probably most importantly from the university's perspective, it's got to stack up in terms of cost of ownership. So the way you own a cloud-based service is different to the way you own a totally on-premise hosted solution. Another one of the outcomes that we looked at when we did the IT strategy, and particularly the enterprise architecture approach, was the way we were going to integrate all of these solutions and services. So I came into the university, and we probably what would be most generously described of, we had a load of best-of-breed solutions. We had a lot of solutions that were very standalone. There was a spider's web of integrations between all these solutions. We had multiple sets of data, duplicated data, different versions of the same data across multiple solutions. So actually the value we were providing to the university was limited because there was an awful lot of workarounds in place accommodating the fact that data wasn't very timely, data wasn't very accurate. So one of the other key outcomes that came out of our strategic approach was the decision to implement an enterprise service bus and a master data management framework. It's not a simple journey, and this is probably a topic for a different presentation that I could probably bore you with all the details of that. But this was key to allow us to consider the use of cloud-based services and looking at how you integrate cloud-based services with your on-premise solutions, how you actually integrate cloud-based services with each other. You need to get that layer that integrates the data, integrates all the systems right and in place before you can start considering, right, how am I going to integrate a finance solution that's hosted in Amazon with a HR solution that's hosted in Azure? How do I do all of that? So that was another key thing. Just going back to what Mark was talking about this morning in terms of talking about the solutions, we also shifted to talking about services. So I know Mark talked about the move between infrastructure to services to product. We still talk about services, but we talk about services from the university's perspective. So what services do academics and students need for teaching and learning? What services do finance or student administration need, rather than the service that we deliver of compute and storage, etc. So understanding how all of these things interconnect via an enterprise service bus and via the sort of master data management environment, it's key again to understand where all of those different solutions are going to want to touch. And getting that clear and having that vision of the future landscape, the future set of solutions is quite important to start off with. We got to a point where we went through all of our solutions and said, right, would there be anything that we wouldn't consider pushing out into the cloud? And we basically came to the conclusion that no, there wasn't. As long as it met those caveats, those conditions, and security and all that sort of stuff. And I know GDPR has been one of those key things over the last couple of years, but as long as it met the conditions that we set, we have quite a rigorous evaluation process of meeting the functional requirements, meeting our technical requirements, etc., including all the security. As long as it met all of that, we would consider pushing anything out. So the journey sort of started off there, setting out that what is our future vision, what is our future model of the university, the enterprise architecture model. Where have I got to? Right. Again, acknowledging that there isn't always a cloud-based solution that's available for some of these areas was quite an important stepping stone. We've spoken to an awful lot of vendors, we've gone through various procurement exercises, and talking to particular software solutions providers, whether it be finance, whether it be HR, student administration, VLEs, etc., and starting to talk about what they think software as a service is. It's quite interesting what that exposes and what the level of maturity within not just the HE sector, but generally of understanding of what software as a service and cloud-based delivery really means. I've got particular views, and they tend to focus or be summarised around technically what's a good software as a service delivered solution, and commercially what's a good software as a service delivered solution. I've spoken to quite a few suppliers where literally they're badging up and they're marketing their traditional on-premise software and support license solution, wrapping it with managed hosting, hosting it in their own data center, and selling it as software as a service. And you can spot the obvious signs, particularly when you get into the charging model, when actually you add up, okay, so what's the support and license costs, what is the managed hosting fee? Oh yeah, all they've done is add all of that up and divided it by 12 or whatever that they have badged up their subscription model. That isn't, for me, software as a service. Software as a service from a commercial perspective, it's got to be based on consumption, it's got to be based on subscription in some shape or form. And for it to be effective for the vendor, to be effective for the people who are delivering this to us, they've got to take advantage from a technical point of view of, right, how can I make that more cost effective for us as customers? Well, I've got to take advantage of the fact that I need to develop solutions that work in that multi-tenancy environment. I need to take advantage and be able to leverage scale. I need to be able to provide that interoperability between my solution and the other solutions that the customer is going to end up using. So simply taking something that works really well within an on-premise hosted environment that is very easy to integrate with other solutions within the same data center, within the same network, and putting it into a managed hosting package doesn't work. There's so many more complications that come from that approach. So again, we've gone down a bit of a journey, and that there are quite a few of our forays into the cloud environment where we've been offered something and we've turned it down. We've ended up implementing an on-premise hosted solution. What our strategy that we've worked out is that actually we need a hybrid approach to all of this. So we know we aren't going to push absolutely everything out to the cloud. So we need a hybrid approach. And that hybrid approach ranges from the solutions that we buy from software and services all the way down to the data center itself. So in with this packaged approach, we are also going down the route of developing a hybrid data center. It's interesting that the university is growing. According to the Times at the weekend, our intake has grown by about a third since 2012. The university has been physically growing. We're building a building a year for the last 6 years, so we've had 6 or 7 new buildings, and these aren't small buildings. These are from the smallest was 3,500 square metres to 7,000 square metres, 500-seater lecture theatres, that sort of thing. So massive physical growth. But I keep getting told, sorry, you've got no more space for any more infrastructure. I can't give you space for a data center. It's, and I've got to say, and keep this between ourselves, I'm a bit surprised by our space constraints in the university in Lincoln, wonderful campus location. We've got physically bags of space, but why we keep running out of space, when I talk to colleagues in London, in some of the other cities, and actually visit their campuses, and they're all crammed in, and I just can't understand why we haven't got enough space. But I keep getting told I can't have any more space for data centers. So part of this approach of taking advantage of cloud-based solutions is a reaction to that. I'm sure we've had really good support from the university in terms of investment in what we're doing, and I'm sure if I really wanted to, I could have built a business case and said, right, give me millions of pounds, I want to build a couple of new data centres, they're going to be really nice and shiny, lots of flashing lights. But again, when I compare it back to my time in the commercial and private sector, 150 million turnover business, I couldn't justify spending millions and millions of pounds on data centres. What I can justify though is taking advantage of cloud services and basically creating this sort of hybrid environment and pushing out the data centre into the cloud. So this hybrid approach includes the data centre, and we are at a stage where we're extending our on-campus data centre, and we've chosen Microsoft Azure as our partner for this. So we're pushing out into Azure, and we're creating a hybrid data centre environment. So we're treating Azure as part of our on-campus data centre, and we're treating our on-campus data centre as part of Azure. That then allows us to say, right, okay, we want a new finance system, we can't find a suitable software as a service delivered solution, so we'll host it on campus, but actually we've now got the flexibility, if we want to push that out into the cloud. So we've created that capability, that flexibility, that agility to push whatever service we want out into the cloud. The aim that we're going for from an infrastructure and IT perspective is creating that flexible capacity, significantly increasing our disaster recovery and capability and resilience, etc. We're moving from a situation with our on-campus data centres where we did have DR off-site with a particular company based up in Harrogate, but our recovery times are days rather than hours or minutes. So from the university's perspective, that might have been fine 10 years ago, but now everything relies on digital. Everything relies on the systems being available. So we weren't providing a good service to the university. We needed to improve that. So pushing our data centre into the cloud allows us to deliver those sorts of improvements. We're looking at, if you know the University of Lincoln at all very well, we do research, but we're not one of the massively research intensive institutions. We've got a lot of aspirations. We've in the growth over the last 6 or 7 years, we've created quite a few new schools. So we've got a School of Maths and Physics that came with the last ref, where I'll use the word, we bought a research team to come into the university, and actually that came with their own data centre as well that we had to accommodate. But we're not one of these big massive research institutions, so I don't have a high performance computing data centre to worry about, but what I do need to do is provide our researchers with some capability, and what pushing out into the cloud provides us with is the effectively an on-demand compute and storage capability, and it's what we're aiming for. We're not there yet, but what we're aiming for is literally research colleague can go onto our portal, have a look, say, right, I've got a bid coming up, I'm going to need X amount of compute power, X amount of storage, how much is it going to cost, put it into the bid, they're successful, and then actually provision it, and hopefully we get it set up well, and they can provision it literally within minutes of actually clicking all the buttons. all the billing gets taken care of. So again, what this is providing us for is the ability to enhance the sort of services we can provide to the university. So where are we now? We've got a very well-established enterprise service bus environment. We're going to continually be developing that. We've not managed to get every single legacy system built into that, but certainly every new system we procure integrates via APIs with our ESB, with our master data management framework, and that works really well. We've implemented a number of software as a service delivered solutions, so finance is one of them, library platforms another one, Office 365, we're fully Office 365, email, OneDrive, etc. We're currently in the process of implementing a new student management system, and actually it's a full end-to-end from, so it includes CRM as well, from recruitment all the way through to alumni. Suffering a few teething problems with that. We're a little bit behind what our original schedule was, but we're part way through that. We're also quite interested in looking at, I don't know whether anybody's seen the recent announcements from Microsoft, Citrix and a few other vendors about the virtualized desktop service that they're offering. We're puzzling at the moment what we do with our Windows 7 corporate environment. We need to obviously do something before Windows 7 ceases support. We do want to take advantage of Windows 10. You probably guessed throughout the presentation that we're a very Microsoft biased environment. So we're quite interested in seeing actually is this another way we can push the client side of things out into the cloud. So we're quite interested in how that's going to develop. And actually, although it's useful to be able to push some of the management problems out of managing an estate of corporate desktop devices and push it out to somebody else to respond to, you need to be very careful with that sort of approach of shifting a problem but not actually solving a problem. So we do have a problem with trying to make sure that we keep up with software patches, with meeting all of the cyber essentials requirements, all this sort of stuff. We have an approach that is championed by the Vice-Chancellor of the university that basically academics can do whatever they want with their machines, which gives us, and I'm sure I've spoken to quite a lot of colleagues, gives us an awful lot of challenges of how do I keep the university secure when a colleague can do whatever they want to their machine, download whatever they want and connect it to my network. And it does give me a few worries. So we're quite a way down the journey. We're not there yet, particularly our hybrid data center side of things. So we've done really well with the software as a service side of things. We have got a hybrid data center environment in place, so we have got fully working solutions up and running in Azure. But we're using DPM, Data Protection Manager, and Azure Site Recovery, ASR, as some of the core components within that hybrid environment. And I've never wanted to be leading edge, but some of the stuff we've been doing and talking to Microsoft, we seem to have been at the bleeding edge for too long. And it's sort of been a bit surprising because we're not talking about a large, massive data center that we're trying to push out into Microsoft Azure. We're talking about a couple of hundred servers, but we seem to keep coming across stumbling blocks, and although I know a couple of colleagues around the sector, Stafford were one of the ones that were sort of early adopters of Azure in the cloud. But we seem to keep coming up with things that Microsoft haven't encountered before, and we're fortunate we've got a good relationship with them. We're quite deep into the organisation. We've gone through their fast track organisation, we've gone through their support organisation, and we're still getting quite a lot of support. But it's There's been too many of these challenges, so we're still not quite there. Some of the other things that we've come across, the lessons learned of actually you need to get into the real detail of your design. I mean, the enterprise architecture approach, but particularly when you get down to that technology layer, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and you find that actually, whilst we may be overcoming some issues that we've got, poor disaster recovery, we're creating better disaster recovery. If you're not careful, you can start introducing new single points of failure, or not realising that you're not resolving a problem with a single point of failure. So we had a interesting scenario. We've got our corporate website which runs on premise and in the cloud, and fails over seamlessly. So if we have a problem with the server on campus, you don't notice it, it fails over seamlessly into Azure. But the thing that does the failover, that single box, if that fails, then it all stops. So you need to go through everything with quite a detailed eye, looking at, have I introduced a new single point of failure? So trying to wrap it up and bring it back to the people side of things. Some of the lessons learned, some of the challenges actually do come back to the people side of things. Now, whether that's with people in the IT team, whether it be people in the university, whether it be people within supplier relationships, I'm sort of lumping it all together. We have gone through a bit of a period with the team where big fear of change, and actually breaking the myth that, oh, we're moving into the cloud, my job's going to be redundant, you don't need compute and storage people anymore. Trying to break down that myth. We absolutely have spent an awful lot of time, and it is going back to what Mark talked about of going, any change process, you need to set out the vision, the direction, the destination, and take people through that, how we're going to get there, what new skills we will need, but actually we still need people to have those skills. So compute and storage, and taking those engineers through that journey of, yes, we do need different skills. It's moving less about managing tin and wire to actually the overlap between compute and storage engineers and developers is becoming very, very blurred. My compute and storage team spend as much time with our developers talking about scripting and coding and configuration, and probably more time doing that than they do managing the bits of tin. The bits of tin are quite easy for them to deal with. So there was quite a bit of a journey to go through there of getting people used to this idea of, no, we're not wiping everybody out and bringing in new people. People in the university, I've got a bit of a bugbear. People seem to switch personalities as soon as they come into work from the personal life. We all deal with LinkedIn, with Twitter, with Facebook, going onto Amazon to buy things. They change things left, right and centre every week, every day. And we deal with it. We might have a bit of a moan, I hate the new LinkedIn whatever, I hate the new Twitter interface, Facebook interfaces, but we deal with it, we get on with it, we know how to deal with it. Colleagues in the university come in to work and all of a sudden it's, oh, something's changed, I can't do my job. How do I do this? I need training. Getting into that mindset of get used to things changing. Change will happen every single day. We use Office 365, the full tool set, as I've said. We sign up to all of the notifications and everything, but there are things that change within that tool set, and literally sometimes it's every Tuesday, every week, whatever, that we don't spot straight away, that we can't tell the university, and we get calls from users, this has changed. They can deal with it when they're in their personal life, but why can't they deal with it here? So changing that culture within the university of actually moving into the cloud and taking advantage of true software as a service delivered solutions, one of the things that we're actually buying into is the fact that the supplier is continually improving those services. We want them to do that. We want them to improve. We want to be able to take advantage of that. And we don't want to have to wait for a long change project for this to happen. I mean, yeah, the solution's got to be up and running, so part of that sort of technical requirements is a software as a service-based solution has got to be always on. We don't want, oh right, every Tuesday we're going to take the system down for 2 hours in the afternoon while we do patches or whatever. It's got to be always on. But we do want to keep receiving those new changes in functionality. It's quite important. This is what we want to be able to take advantage of. And changing the culture in the university is quite a key part of that, of getting people used to that, being able to be a bit more self-sufficient. I mean, we do need to provide them with support, materials. We use lynda.com within the university primarily for students, but actually it's a fantastic resource for staff as well. We need to generate our own content as well and push it out there. But persuading colleagues in the university to self-serve that sort of information rather than wait for it to be pointed out to them and prompted has been quite a journey. And probably finally it's the relationship with the suppliers of the solutions that's changing. Particularly where you're talking about software as a service delivered solutions, you're talking about it is a service. It's not just a piece of software. The solution provider becomes embedded within your support organisation. I mean, they might not physically be there, but the traditional flow through, somebody phones up with a problem, it hits the service desk, we work out, goes to second line, third line support, and eventually to the supplier. That relationship needs to change as well. You need to get a lot closer to the supplier, and you need to manage and develop relationships between multiple suppliers, and you need to understand how that all works. And again, some of it does go back to the core of this is the data that's moving around, so if something goes wrong with the solution that causes a problem with data, you need to understand how that moves around, and enterprise architecture helps you with that. But the relationship with the supplier is quite important. So people are probably the core of all of the strategy and the success to get that journey working well into the cloud and being ready for change and being able to adopt to change. Okay, I think I'm probably half an hour behind the original schedule, but I don't know whether we've got time for any questions.
No? Everybody's being quiet by the look of it, I think, Drew.
Bored you to death. Okay.
I'm sure you'll be happy to take questions outside of the room as well if anybody's got them and wants to ask them in a little bit more privacy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.